Check my diplomatic status before you do this. Deputy Ambassador Marcus Bennett stood beside a patrol vehicle on a secured Manhattan block, both hands clearly visible while Officer Eric Dawson held his diplomatic credential beneath the cold afternoon light. The sealed briefing packet Marcus had been carrying rested on the hood several inches away. Dawson looked at the card, then back at Marcus. Your card does not decide what happens here. Marcus remained still. No. The law does. Officer Nathan Cole stood near the patrol computer, watching the exchange with growing concern. Eric, I can verify the credential number. Dawson did not look at him. Not yet. Marcus's expression barely changed. What are you waiting for? For you to stop telling me how to handle a security contact. I am not asking you to believe me. Marcus nodded toward the credential. I am asking you to verify what you already have. Across the sidewalk, Rachel Parker had stopped near a coffee shop entrance with her phone raised. She had begun recording after hearing Dawson repeatedly question why Marcus was approaching the restricted diplomatic entrance. Above them, security cameras covered the checkpoint. Beyond the barricade, Manhattan traffic moved through the afternoon while a black diplomatic sedan waited half a block away after being redirected by the temporary security perimeter. Marcus glanced toward it. That vehicle assignment can also be checked. Dawson folded his arms. You seem very interested in telling us what we can check. Because every check gives you the same answer. Cole looked down at the credential information. There is a status number here. This should take less than a minute. Dawson's jaw tightened. Nathan. Cole stopped. Marcus's phone began vibrating inside the belongings tray on the patrol hood. The screen illuminated. Laura Mitchell. Diplomatic protocol. Dawson noticed the name. Do not touch the phone. Marcus kept his hands exactly where they were. I was not reaching for it. The call stopped. 3 seconds later, it began again. Cole looked at Dawson. That is protocol calling. A contact name proves nothing. Marcus nodded once. Correct. So call protocol independently. Dawson stared at him. Marcus continued, verify the credential number. Contact the diplomatic liaison. Confirm the vehicle assignment. Call protocol from an official number. You do not need to trust a single word I say. Rachel's camera remained steady. Cole looked toward the computer again. Eric, what information would satisfy you? Dawson did not answer him. Instead, he turned toward Marcus. You have repeatedly challenged perimeter instructions. I have complied with every instruction. You continued trying to enter a restricted area. Because I am expected inside. According to you. Marcus looked at the credential in Dawson's hand. According to that. The phone stopped ringing again. Marcus took a slow breath. He had spent nearly 2 decades in diplomatic rooms where impatience could destroy months of careful work. He knew anger could be justified and still make the truth harder to hear. Officer Dawson, before you take this any further, verify my diplomatic status. Dawson reached toward his radio. Turn around and keep your hands visible. Cole stepped forward. Eric, wait. Let me run the number first. Dawson shook his head. He is being detained until we establish who he is and why he is here. Marcus slowly turned as instructed. You already have the means to establish both. Face forward. Marcus complied. His voice remained calm. Please preserve your body camera recording and note that I requested verification before further processing. Dawson gave a short breath. Everybody has a reason they think they should be treated differently. Marcus looked toward the diplomatic entrance without moving his hands. I am asking you to treat the law the same. His phone began vibrating for the 3rd time. Laura Mitchell. Diplomatic protocol. Cole stared at the screen, then at the credential, and finally at Dawson. Eric, I am checking this. Dawson turned sharply toward him. Cole was already entering the number. The verification screen began loading. Marcus said nothing. The sealed packet remained on the hood beside his credential, two ordinary objects carrying answers nobody had yet allowed to matter. 11 minutes earlier, Marcus Bennett had walked out of his diplomatic mission believing the only thing capable of delaying his official meeting was Manhattan traffic. 11 minutes earlier, Marcus Bennett left the diplomatic mission carrying a sealed briefing packet beneath his arm and expecting a routine walk to the residents' meeting. At 48, he had spent enough years in diplomatic service to know that official work was usually less dramatic than outsiders imagined. Most of it involved schedules, briefing papers, careful language, and arriving exactly when protocol expected you. His charcoal suit was plain, his dark overcoat unremarkable, and there was no security entourage around him. His phone vibrated before he reached the lobby doors. Laura Mitchell from Diplomatic Protocol had sent a message. Residents' meeting moved forward 15 minutes. Marcus checked his watch and replied, "On my way." A second message followed. "Security rerouting your vehicle to East Checkpoint." Marcus looked through the glass toward Manhattan traffic. The residence was only a short walk away. He sent another reply. "I will walk the remaining distance." Outside, the afternoon air carried the familiar mixture of traffic noise, food carts, and impatient horns. Marcus moved east with the briefing packet tucked securely beneath his arm. His diplomatic credential rested inside his coat. Several blocks ahead, temporary barricades narrowed access around the diplomatic residence after a security alert earlier that afternoon. Officer Eric Dawson stood near the controlled entrance while Officer Nathan Cole monitored the patrol computer and redirected pedestrians. Dawson had been working the perimeter long enough for repetition to become irritation. "Restricted access," he told a delivery worker, pointing toward another entrance. Then he saw Marcus approaching. "Sir, this area is closed." Marcus stopped. "I am expected inside." Dawson looked at the sealed packet. "Public entrance is around the corner." "I am not using the public entrance." Dawson's expression hardened. "Then step away from the barricade." Marcus remained calm. "Officer, I am Deputy Ambassador Marcus Bennett. I am scheduled at the residence." Dawson looked at him for a moment, then at the packet. "Identification." Marcus nodded. "Certainly. My diplomatic credential is inside my coat." Dawson watched his hands. Slowly. Marcus followed the instruction exactly, removed the credential case, opened it, and held it forward. Dawson took it. His eyes moved over Marcus's photograph, name, title, credential number, accreditation information, and official markings. Marcus expected him to verify it. Instead, Dawson looked back at him. "Where did you get this?" Marcus blinked once. "It was issued through the diplomatic accreditation process." Cole glanced over from the patrol computer. "Eric, I can check the number." Dawson kept reading the card. "Not yet." Marcus looked toward Cole, then back at Dawson. "There is no reason to wait. I decide what needs checking." "Of course. I am suggesting the most direct check." Dawson's eyes narrowed. "Why are you walking instead of arriving in an official vehicle?" Marcus pointed down the block without raising his arm above waist level. "My assigned sedan was redirected to the East Checkpoint because of your security perimeter." "Convenient." Marcus studied him. "It is also verifiable." Cole looked toward the computer again. "Vehicle assignments should be accessible through liaison confirmation." Dawson ignored him. "What is in the packet?" "Briefing material for the meeting." "Open it." Marcus's expression changed slightly. "I cannot do that here." "Why not?" "Because it contains official diplomatic material." Dawson gave a skeptical look. According to you. Marcus nodded toward the credential in Dawson's hand. According to the status you can verify. A woman leaving a nearby coffee shop, Rachel Parker, slowed when she heard the exchange. She watched Dawson holding the credential while Marcus stood quietly several feet away. Marcus's phone began vibrating inside his coat. He looked at Dawson. May I answer that? No. Marcus left his hands visible. The vibration stopped. Seconds later, it began again. Dawson looked toward the sound. Who keeps calling? Diplomatic protocol. Cole stepped closer. Eric, maybe we should verify before this goes any further. Dawson looked at his partner. I said not yet. Marcus's face remained composed, but something inside the encounter had changed. The question was no longer whether proof existed. Dawson was holding the proof. The question was how many times Marcus would have to point toward the truth before the officer allowed himself to check it. Rachel Parker remained near the coffee shop entrance as Marcus Bennett's phone stopped vibrating for the second time. She had not started recording yet, but the scene held her attention. Officer Eric Dawson possessed the credential he had requested. Officer Nathan Cole had a computer capable of checking it. Marcus had offered an official contact and a vehicle assignment. Still, nobody had verified anything. Officer Dawson, Marcus said, what information would satisfy you? Dawson looked up from the credential. You need to stop directing this contact. I am asking a question. And I am telling you to wait. Marcus nodded once. Then I will wait. The answer seemed to unsettle Dawson more than an argument might have. Marcus stood quietly with the sealed briefing packet beneath his arm and his hands visible. Cole moved closer. Eric, let me run the number. Dawson shook his head. Not yet. Why? Dawson looked sharply at his partner. Cole did not back away from the question. We have the credential. Verification is available. If it is valid, we resolve this. If it is not, we know that too. Marcus looked toward Cole. Exactly. Dawson turned back to Marcus. I did not ask you. Rachel took out her phone and pressed record. Above the checkpoint, a security camera faced the barricade. Marcus noticed it, then looked toward the black diplomatic sedan now waiting beyond the rerouted traffic lane. That is my assigned vehicle. Dawson glanced toward it. Anybody can point at a car. Then confirm the assignment. Marcus's phone vibrated again. Laura Mitchell. Diplomatic protocol. The name appeared clearly on the screen through the opening of his coat. Cole saw it. That is protocol again. Dawson's expression remained skeptical. A contact label is not verification. Marcus answered calmly, I agree. Call the protocol office using an independently obtained number. For several seconds, Dawson said nothing. Traffic moved behind them. A cold breeze pushed a paper cup along the curb. Rachel's camera captured Marcus waiting without raising his voice or stepping toward the barricade. Cole returned to the patrol computer. I am opening the credential system. Dawson turned. Nathan, hold off. For what? Because I am still establishing the circumstances. Marcus looked at Dawson. You asked why I am here. I told you. You asked for identification. I provided it. You questioned the vehicle. It can be confirmed. You questioned protocol. They are calling. His tone remained measured. What circumstances left to establish before verification? Dawson's jaw tightened. Whether you are complying with perimeter instructions. Marcus paused. I stopped when you told me to stop. You continued arguing. I continued answering. Rachel moved a few feet closer while maintaining distance. Dawson noticed her phone. Ma'am, stay back from the security area. I am outside the barricade, Rachel replied. Stay there. I intend to. Cole looked at the computer screen. System is ready. Dawson stepped toward Marcus. Place the briefing packet on the patrol hood. Marcus looked at the sealed packet. I cannot authorize you to open diplomatic material on the sidewalk. I did not say open it. Put it down. Marcus complied carefully, setting it beside his credential. Two official objects now rested under the afternoon light. Anything else? He asked. Dawson looked at him. Turn around and keep your hands visible. Cole immediately spoke. Eric, run the status first. Marcus remained facing Dawson. Am I being detained? Yes. On what basis? Failure to comply with controlled access instructions while your identity and authority are being established. Marcus glanced toward the credential. My identity is waiting for you to establish it. Dawson's expression hardened. Turn around. Marcus complied without resistance. Rachel kept recording. Cole stared at his partner for another second, then entered the credential number anyway. Marcus heard the keyboard behind him. The screen loaded. His phone rang again. Laura Mitchell. Diplomatic protocol. Nobody answered it. Cole leaned toward the monitor as lines of information appeared. His face changed first. Eric. Dawson did not respond. Cole read the screen again, slower this time. Marcus Bennett. Deputy Ambassador. Accredited diplomatic agent. Active status. He stopped at the final notation and looked toward Dawson. Eric, we have a problem. Dawson turned toward him. Cole pointed at the screen. His status shows full diplomatic immunity. For the first time since the encounter began, Dawson had nothing to say. Officer Eric Dawson stared at the verification screen while Officer Nathan Cole read the status line again. Accredited diplomatic agent. Active status. Full diplomatic immunity. The words did not change the second time. Marcus Bennett remained facing the patrol vehicle with his hands visible, exactly as Dawson had instructed. His credential and sealed briefing packet rested together on the hood. Rachel Parker continued recording from beyond the barricade. Eric, Cole said quietly, we need to stop this detention. Dawson looked from the screen to Marcus. There could be an error in the system. Cole's expression tightened. Then call the liaison and confirm it. Marcus turned his head slightly. May I face you? Dawson hesitated. Cole answered first. Yes, sir. Marcus turned slowly. There was no satisfaction in his expression. Officer Dawson, I asked you to verify my status before this went further. Dawson looked toward the credential. We had a security alert. I had to establish who you were. And I gave you the means to do that at the beginning. Marcus's phone began vibrating again. Laura Mitchell. Diplomatic protocol. Cole pointed toward it. Let him answer. Dawson said nothing. Marcus retrieved the phone only after Cole nodded. Bennett. Laura's voice came quickly. Marcus, where are you? Your vehicle is at the east checkpoint and the residence is waiting. Marcus looked at Dawson. I am at the security perimeter with 2 police officers. Laura became silent for half a second. Why? There has been a problem verifying my status. Put me on speaker. Marcus did. Laura identified herself and provided the protocol office information, Marcus's accreditation details, vehicle assignment, and official meeting authorization. Cole compared each item with the computer. Every line matched. Confirmed, he said. Dawson looked toward the black diplomatic sedan beyond the barricade. The driver was now standing beside it, watching. Laura's voice sharpened. Deputy Ambassador Bennett is an accredited diplomatic agent traveling on official duty. Has he been placed under arrest? Dawson answered, he was detained while we established his identity. Marcus looked directly at him. After you had my credential. Before Dawson could respond, another vehicle entered the controlled block. Laura ended the call with a simple promise. I am 2 minutes away. She arrived with Deputy Commissioner William Grant. Grant stepped from the vehicle, took in the patrol car, the sealed packet on its hood, Rachel's phone, and Marcus standing beside Dawson. Deputy Ambassador Bennett? Yes. Grant looked at Cole. Status? Verified, sir. Credential active. Accreditation confirmed. Vehicle assignment confirmed. Diplomatic immunity confirmed. Grant turned to Dawson. When did he give you the credential? Dawson paused. Near the beginning of the contact. When did you verify it? Silence. Grant looked toward Cole. Officer? Cole answered. I verified it several minutes later after recommending we check it earlier. Grant's eyes returned to Dawson. Why was verification delayed? I was maintaining control of the perimeter. Grant glanced at Marcus. Was he refusing instructions? Cole shook his head. No, sir. He stopped when directed and kept his hands visible. Rachel's phone captured the entire exchange. Laura arrived on foot from the vehicle and went directly to Marcus. Are you all right? I am. She looked at the briefing packet. That is the residence packet. Yes. Grant nodded toward the patrol hood. Return his credential and belongings. Cole handed Marcus the credential. Marcus slipped it back into its case, then picked up the sealed packet. Dawson finally spoke. Deputy Ambassador, I did not know you had immunity. Marcus looked at him. You did not need to know me personally. He held up the credential case. You needed to check what this told you. Grant looked toward Dawson's body camera. Both recordings will be preserved. Dispatch audio and system timestamps too. Marcus added, and the civilian recording, if she is willing. Rachel nodded. I am. Grant turned to Dawson. You are relieved from this perimeter assignment pending supervisory review. Report to your command. Dawson's expression changed. Sir, I was doing my job. Grant remained calm. Then the recordings will show that. Marcus stepped toward the diplomatic sedan, then stopped. Deputy Commissioner. Grant looked at him. Do not review this because my immunity embarrassed anyone. Grant waited. Marcus continued, review why the evidence only became important after the situation had already gone too far. Grant nodded slowly. Understood. Marcus entered the sedan beside Laura. As the vehicle moved toward the residence, he looked once at the credential in his hand. The card had contained the same information from the first second Dawson held it. Nothing about Marcus's status had changed. Only someone's willingness to verify it had. The diplomatic sedan carried Marcus Bennett through the secured entrance less than 4 minutes after Deputy Commissioner William Grant ended the detention. Laura Mitchell sat beside him, checking messages from the residence while Marcus held the sealed briefing packet across his knees. His credential case remained in his coat pocket. They moved the meeting back, Laura said. How thoughtful. She looked at him. You are making jokes. That usually means you are angry. I am not angry that an officer stopped me during a security alert. That is a very diplomatic sentence. It is also true. Marcus looked through the window as the sedan passed the final checkpoint. I am angry that he had the answer in his hand and kept searching for a different one. Laura became quiet. The vehicle stopped beneath the residence entrance. Ambassador Charles Whitmore was waiting inside the lobby when Marcus entered. Are you all right? Yes. Whitmore looked at the sealed packet, then at Marcus's coat. Protocol says you were detained. Temporarily. After presenting your credential? Yes. Whitmore's expression hardened. And they confirmed your status? Eventually. Your immunity? Also confirmed. Marcus walked toward the meeting room. But I do not want immunity to become the entire story. Whitmore followed him. Why not? Marcus stopped beside a tall window. Because then the lesson becomes that Officer Dawson made a mistake by detaining someone powerful enough to be protected. You were protected. Legally, yes. Marcus looked at him. Morally, that is not the important part. He had several ordinary ways to verify what I told him before the situation escalated. Laura nodded. Credential number. Protocol office. Liaison confirmation. Vehicle assignment. Exactly. Marcus touched the credential case through his coat. None of those facts became more true when the computer finally displayed my status. The meeting room doors opened. Several officials were already seated around a polished table. An empty chair waited beside a brass placard bearing Marcus's title. He crossed the room without ceremony and placed the sealed briefing packet on the table. Then he removed his credential case and set it beside the placard. The two objects looked almost disappointingly ordinary. One had been treated as suspicious. The other had been waiting for him the entire time. Whitmore took his seat at the head of the table. Before we begin, Deputy Ambassador Bennett was delayed by a security incident. The appropriate authorities are reviewing it. Marcus looked toward him. And that is all we know for certain at this stage. Whitmore understood. Agreed. The meeting began. Across Manhattan, Grant was already reviewing the first body camera recording. Dawson's camera showed Marcus stopping when instructed. It showed the credential being presented. It captured Cole offering verification and Dawson delaying it. Then came the first protocol call. The second. The third. Grant wrote down the timestamps. He opened Cole's recording next. From that angle, the verification computer was visible throughout much of the contact. Available. And used. Then Cole finally entered the number. The result appeared almost immediately. Grant paused the footage. A supervisor beside him leaned toward the screen. That was fast. Grant looked at the timestamp. 27 seconds. The supervisor frowned. The entire status check? 27 seconds from entry to confirmation. Grant resumed the recording. Full diplomatic status. Active accreditation. Immunity notation. Vehicle assignment. Grant then reviewed Rachel Parker's video. Marcus never raised his voice. He repeatedly offered independent ways to verify his identity. Grant wrote another line beneath the timestamps. Verification was available before detention. Near the end of the meeting, Marcus's phone vibrated. A message from Laura appeared even though she was sitting across the table. Body cameras secured. Civilian video preserved. System timestamps retained. Marcus read it and turned the phone face down. Whitmore noticed. Good news? Marcus looked at the credential beside his placard. Necessary news. He opened the sealed packet to the first page. Outside, Grant continued watching the recordings. Inside, Marcus returned to the work he had been trying to reach all afternoon. His immunity had ended the legal uncertainty. But the more important question was only beginning. Why had 27 seconds of verification required an entire confrontation before anyone allowed those seconds to happen? By the next morning, Deputy Commissioner William Grant had synchronized 4 records into a single timeline: Dawson's body camera, Cole's body camera, Rachel Parker's phone video, and the credential verification log. The sequence was less complicated than the encounter had made it seem. Marcus Bennett approached the controlled entrance. Officer Eric Dawson stopped him. Marcus complied. Dawson requested identification. Marcus produced an accredited diplomatic credential. Officer Nathan Cole offered to verify it. Dawson delayed. Diplomatic protocol called once. Then twice. Then a third time. Marcus offered an independently obtained protocol number, liaison confirmation, and vehicle assignment. Dawson still delayed. Only after Cole entered the credential number did the system return the answer in 27 seconds. Grant watched the sequence again without sound. The absence of voices made the physical facts even clearer. Marcus never crossed the barricade after being told to stop. He never moved toward Dawson unexpectedly. His hands remained visible. The credential spent most of the encounter either in Dawson's hand or on the patrol hood. Grant turned the sound back on. "What information would satisfy you?" Marcus had asked. Grant paused the recording there. The question mattered because Dawson had never provided a clear answer. Grant opened the department database and searched Dawson's prior complaints. 3 files appeared with enough similarity to justify closer review. One involved a black corporate attorney entering a restricted office garage with valid building credentials. Another involved a black physician arriving through a hospital service entrance during an overnight emergency. The third involved a black engineer reporting to a secured utility facility after hours. Different places. Different circumstances. None proved what happened with Marcus. Grant wrote that sentence first. But each complaint contained a familiar concern. Verification had been available, yet questioning continued longer than the complainant believed necessary. Grant ordered the cases reviewed independently before anyone described them as a pattern. That afternoon, he called Marcus. "We have a preliminary timeline." Marcus stood near the window of his diplomatic office, the credential case resting beside the sealed packet from the previous day. "Preliminary means unfinished." "Correct." "Then tell me only what the records establish." Grant looked at his notes. "You complied with the initial stop. You presented the credential when requested. Officer Cole proposed verification. Protocol attempted contact repeatedly. You offered multiple independent verification methods. Officer Dawson delayed using them. Officer Cole eventually checked the credential, and the system confirmed your status in 27 seconds. Marcus looked toward the city below. "And the detention?" "That is under formal review, including whether it continued after reasonable verification should have occurred." "Good." Grant hesitated. "We also located prior complaints involving Dawson." Marcus became quiet. "Substantiated?" "Mixed outcomes. Some closed without formal findings. One resulted in counseling. Then do not use my encounter to rewrite them." Grant leaned back. "There are similarities. Similarities justify questions. They do not answer them." "Understood." Marcus touched the edge of the credential case. "What about Cole?" "Reviewed separately. His attempts to verify are documented." "They should be." Grant paused. "You could make this process much harder for Dawson if you spoke publicly." Marcus's expression tightened. "That is not my job." "You are not angry?" "Of course I am angry." Marcus turned from the window. "But anger is not an evidentiary standard." Grant was silent for a moment. "The immunity issue is also being reviewed." "It should be." Marcus looked at the credential. "But do not let immunity become the moral shortcut." "Explain." "If the lesson is that Dawson should have been more careful because I had diplomatic immunity, then everyone learns the wrong thing." Marcus picked up the credential case. "He should have verified the evidence because verification was available. My legal status made the consequences more complicated. It did not create the obligation to check." Grant wrote the sentence down. That distinction matters. It matters to the next person who does not have immunity. After the call, Marcus returned the credential to his coat and looked at the sealed packet beside it. 27 seconds. That was all the computer had needed. Across town, Grant reopened Dawson's body camera and returned to the moment Marcus first offered the card. This time he did not watch the diplomat. He watched the officer holding the answer and choosing, for several minutes, not to ask the system whether it was true. 2 days later, the formal review moved beyond the question of whether Marcus Bennett's credential had been valid. That fact was settled. Deputy Commissioner William Grant now wanted to understand why Officer Eric Dawson had repeatedly postponed a verification that required only 27 seconds. The review team examined the encounter from every available angle. Dawson's body camera showed Marcus stopping at the barricade, identifying himself, and producing his diplomatic credential. Nathan Cole's camera showed the verification terminal available only a few steps away. Rachel Parker's video captured Marcus offering one solution after another without raising his voice. The system log recorded exactly when Cole finally entered the credential number and exactly when the confirmation appeared. Diplomatic protocol records showed 3 unanswered calls during the same period. The black sedan assignment was confirmed separately. Nothing depended on Marcus being believed simply because he said he was a diplomat. Evidence had been available from the beginning. Grant then turned to Dawson's previous complaints. The black attorney, physician, and engineer were interviewed again. Their encounters were not treated as copies of Marcus's case. Different locations. Different circumstances. Different legal questions. But investigators found one recurring concern worth examining. Dawson appeared slow to accept verification after initially forming suspicion. Grant refused to call that proof of racial bias before the review supported such a conclusion. He also refused to pretend the similarities did not matter. Meanwhile, Marcus continued working. He attended meetings, answered cables, reviewed policy documents, and carried the same credential every day. People around him expected anger. What they saw instead was precision. When Laura Mitchell asked whether he wanted the mission to issue a public statement, Marcus shook his head. Not while the review is still determining facts. People already know what happened. People know fragments. The video is circulating. Marcus looked up from his desk. A video can show conduct. It cannot automatically explain motive. Laura studied him. You think Dawson deserves that distinction? Everyone does. That afternoon, Grant called. We have enough to sustain findings related to the detention and delayed verification. Marcus leaned back. What exactly are you sustaining? Failure to promptly use available verification, failure to reassess the basis for continued detention as contradictory information accumulated, and failure to appropriately account for confirmed diplomatic status once it became available. And racial bias? Grant paused. Still under review. The prior complaints raise serious concerns, but I am not going to tell you we proved motive when we have not. Marcus nodded. Good. Grant sounded surprised. Good. Accurate language matters most when inaccurate language would benefit you. Grant was silent for a moment. Dawson will remain off field duty while the personnel process continues. That is your department's decision. You do not want to recommend anything? No. Marcus looked through the window toward the late afternoon traffic. My immunity does not give me authority over his career. Grant lowered his voice. You understand that people expect a dramatic consequence. People often confuse consequence with justice. Marcus picked up his credential case. If the evidence supports discipline, impose discipline. If it supports training, impose training. If it supports something more serious, follow it there. But do not ask me to choose because I was the person standing beside the patrol car. Across town, Dawson sat with a department representative watching the body camera footage. The recording reached the moment Marcus asked, "What information would satisfy you?" The representative paused it. "What was your answer?" Dawson stared at the frozen image. "I did not give one." "Why?" Dawson looked toward the credential visible in his own recorded hand. For several seconds, he said nothing. "I thought he was trying to control the contact." "Was he?" Dawson watched Marcus standing with his hands visible. "No." The representative resumed the footage. Cole offered verification. Dawson refused. Protocol called. Dawson dismissed it. Marcus offered an independent number. Dawson declined. The vehicle appeared. Dawson remained suspicious. 27 seconds after Cole finally checked, the entire assumption collapsed. Dawson lowered his eyes. For the first time, the review was no longer asking him what Marcus had done wrong. It was asking why every answer had been available, and why he had needed so long to let any of them count. 2 weeks after the encounter, Deputy Commissioner William Grant completed the formal administrative findings. The review did not begin with Marcus Bennett's immunity. It began with the first moment Officer Eric Dawson had enough information to replace assumption with verification. The body cameras showed Marcus stopping when instructed. He identified himself. He produced his diplomatic credential. Nathan Cole offered to verify it. Dawson delayed. Diplomatic protocol called repeatedly. Marcus offered an independently obtained protocol number, diplomatic liaison confirmation, and his assigned vehicle information. Dawson delayed again. When Cole finally entered the credential number, the system returned confirmation in 27 seconds. Active accreditation. Diplomatic agent status. Immunity notation. Vehicle assignment. Grant read the timeline twice before signing the findings. The department sustained violations related to delayed verification, failure to reassess the justification for continued detention as contradictory information accumulated, and improper handling of confirmed diplomatic status. The separate review of Dawson's previous encounters remained ongoing. Investigators had identified similarities involving black professionals whose identification or authorization had been available but was not promptly accepted. Those similarities raised serious concerns, but Grant refused to convert concern into a conclusion before the evidence supported one. Nathan Cole's conduct was documented separately. His repeated attempts to verify Marcus's credential and his eventual decision to complete the check were preserved in the record. Dawson remained removed from field duty while the personnel process continued. Grant called Marcus that afternoon. "The findings are complete." Marcus stood inside his diplomatic office with his credential case resting beside a stack of briefing papers. Were they based on the recordings and verification records? Yes. Were Cole's decisions reviewed separately? Yes. And the previous complaints? Still being examined independently. Marcus nodded. "Then continue." Grant paused. "You still do not want to recommend a consequence?" "No, even now?" Marcus looked toward the credential case. "Especially now." Grant waited. Marcus continued, "If you ask the person who was detained to decide the officer's punishment, you replace procedure with emotion. Some people would call that accountability. I would call it influence." Grant leaned back. "There is another issue. The department is revising its credential verification procedures for sensitive security assignments." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "What changes?" "When an officer receives a credential that can be independently verified, available verification should be used promptly unless there is a documented safety reason not to do so. Supervisors will also review repeated complaints involving similar failures to reassess information." Marcus looked through his office window at Manhattan below. "That matters more." "More than Dawson's discipline?" "Yes." Grant sounded surprised. Why? Because discipline addresses yesterday. Procedure may protect someone tomorrow. That evening, Laura Mitchell found Marcus preparing another sealed packet for the same diplomatic residence. You heard about the policy changes? Grant called. And Dawson? Personnel process. Laura watched him slide documents into the packet. You really are going to leave it there? Marcus looked up. Where else should I take it? You could demand an apology. An apology cannot verify the next person's credential. You could speak publicly. Eventually, perhaps. When the facts are final. Laura leaned against the desk. You know what bothers me most? What? Everyone became careful after they saw the immunity notation. Marcus closed the packet. That bothers me too. Because they realized they could not legally treat you like an ordinary person? Marcus shook his head. Because an ordinary person should still have evidence checked when checking it takes 27 seconds. The next morning, Grant met Dawson for the final administrative conference before the Personnel Board considered the sustained findings. Dawson sat across the table without his field assignment. Grant placed the written report between them. Deputy Ambassador Bennett recommended no punishment. Dawson looked up. None? He refused to recommend any outcome. Dawson stared at the report. Why? Grant folded his hands. Because he says his immunity is not the lesson. Dawson looked confused. Grant continued, the lesson is that you had a credential, a verification system, a partner asking to use it, protocol calling, and a vehicle assignment that could be confirmed. He tapped the report once. The law made his status consequential. Your decisions made this review necessary. Dawson lowered his eyes to the first page. Outside the room, the department continued revising procedures. Across Manhattan, Marcus Bennett placed the same credential inside his coat before leaving for another meeting. It had not become more valid because an investigation finally believed it. It had simply become harder for anyone to pretend that 27 seconds of truth were too much to ask. 3 weeks later, Marcus Bennett approached the same controlled diplomatic entrance carrying another sealed briefing packet beneath his arm. Manhattan moved around him with its usual indifference. Taxis passed through the intersection. A delivery truck waited at the curb. Cold afternoon light reflected from the glass buildings above the security barricades. Marcus wore the same charcoal overcoat and carried the same diplomatic credential inside it. The officer working the checkpoint that afternoon was someone he had never met. Good afternoon, sir. Credential, please. Marcus removed the case and handed it over. The officer examined the photograph and identification number, turned toward the verification terminal, and entered the information. Marcus glanced at his watch without thinking. The screen returned confirmation. You are cleared, Deputy Ambassador. The officer handed the credential back. 29 seconds. Marcus slipped it into his coat. Thank you. Have a good afternoon, sir. Marcus stepped through the checkpoint, then heard another voice behind him. Credential, please. He turned slightly. A young black diplomatic courier, perhaps 25, stood where Marcus had been moments earlier. The courier wore a simple navy coat and carried a document pouch against his side. No official sedan waited for him. No protocol officer stood nearby. No senior supervisor watched from the curb. The officer accepted his credential, entered the number, waited for confirmation, and returned it. All set. Thank you. The courier nodded. Thank you, officer. The entire exchange took less than half a minute. Marcus watched him enter, then continued walking. No one around them understood why those ordinary seconds mattered. That was exactly why they mattered. Inside the residence, Laura Mitchell waited near the elevators. You stopped at the checkpoint. For about 29 seconds. She smiled. You timed it? Not intentionally. Of course not. They entered the elevator. Deputy Commissioner Grant called this morning, Laura said. Marcus looked at her. Final personnel decision? The board sustained the administrative findings. Dawson remains subject to departmental consequences and conditions before any return to field responsibilities. The separate review of the older complaints is continuing. Marcus nodded. And Cole? His actions were documented separately, including his attempts to verify your status. Good. Laura studied him. That is all? What would you like me to do? Look satisfied. Marcus looked toward the elevator numbers. I saw a courier get verified downstairs. Laura waited. No supervisor. No argument. No one important watching. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped into the corridor. That is more satisfying. Ambassador Charles Whitmore was already inside the meeting room when Marcus arrived. His usual chair waited beside the polished table. Marcus placed the sealed packet down, removed his credential case, and set it beside the briefing papers. Whitmore looked at the card. The famous credential. Marcus gave him a dry look. It would prefer to return to obscurity. Whitmore smiled. Any regrets about refusing to recommend Dawson's punishment? Marcus sat down. No, even after the findings? Especially after the findings. Evidence reached the conclusion without needing my anger to push it there. Whitmore nodded toward the credential. And the immunity? Marcus looked at the card. Useful law. Wrong moral. Meaning? If people leave this story believing I deserved verification because I had immunity, then nothing important changed. Marcus glanced toward the corridor where the young courier had disappeared minutes earlier. The important part is that evidence should count before anyone knows whether the person carrying it has power. The other officials entered and took their seats. Conversation settled around the table. Marcus opened the sealed packet. Outside, the checkpoint continued operating. A translator presented identification. Verified. A driver arrived with a delivery authorization. Verified. A maintenance worker produced a temporary access credential. Verified. No one inside the meeting room saw those exchanges. No camera crowd gathered. No senior official intervened. Procedure simply worked. Afternoon light moved across Marcus's credential beside the briefing packet. 3 weeks earlier, the same card had rested on a patrol hood while someone decided whether its truth deserved to be checked. Now it was only a credential again. Marcus placed one hand beside it and turned to the first page of the meeting agenda. Beyond the windows, Manhattan continued moving. At the checkpoint below, another credential entered the system, another confirmation appeared, and another person walked through without needing to prove that they were important enough for the truth to matter.